John von Neumann was a Hungarian-American mathematician and scientist who contributed major advances to a wide variety of fields, including economics, advanced and applied mathematics, foundational computer science, and quantum mechanics. Of his work, what had the most influence on U.S. history was significant work in the Manhattan Project and later nuclear advances, including advancing the concept of mutually assured destruction and the equilibrium strategy as U.S. policy, and put significant efforts into maintaining the Cold War nuclear standoff, including making the ENIAC computer programmable and starting projects for intercontinental ballistic missiles. However, all of his work impacts U.S. history in some ways, and while each piece separately may not make him one of the U.S.'s most notable figures, the sheer breadth of his work, much of it revolutionary for the field, makes him one of the U.S.'s most influential scientists, a polymath in the tradition of Da Vinci or Newton, who transformed the fields he worked in. Von Neumann was born in 1903 in Hungary, at the time part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He was a child prodigy who could do very difficult arithmetic, such as dividing two 8-digit numbers in his head by the time he was 6, and was proficient with calculus by the age of 8, all before formal schooling began. By the age of 19, he had published 2 major mathematical papers, one of which gives us the modern rigorous definitions for natural numbers, also known as counting numbers. As his father wished to have von Neumann follow him into industry, von Neumann studied chemical engineering in college, working on a mathematics PhD at the same time, passing both with a thesis axiomatizing Cantor's set theory, a major portion of the underpinnings of modern mathematics. He then began teaching at the University of Berlin for 6 years, the youngest to be approved as a teacher there for any subject. In 1933, von Neumann moved to the Americas to begin working in Princeton's elite Institute for Advanced Study, where he worked alongside the biggest names in physics and mathematics at the time, including Albert Einstein, who was annoyed by von Neumann's habit of loudly playing German march music to help him concentrate, as von Neumann did much of his best work in busy environments, even refusing to use the study his wife set up for him, and instead working in the living room with the TV playing loudly. Of von Neumann's work in America, almost all of it reshaped the fields it was done in, from abstract algebra to quantum mechanics. Von Neumann added major features to abstract algebra, changing the field dramatically, created the field of continuous geometry, which works with dimensions between 0 and 1, before creating a mathematical foundation for quantum mechanics, leaning on his previous work in abstract algebra. He then proposed the idea of mathematical quantum logic designed to describe quantum mechanics, which do not function with some of the standard rules of mathematical logic. Von Neumann also founded the discipline of game theory and is responsible for several of its basic theories, including alongside a book on the subject that garnered enough attention to be front-page news for the New York Times. Not an everyday occurrence for a mathematical book. This book also had commentary on economics, which von Neumann continued, giving the discipline of economics more mathematical tools to describe abstract economies and optimize them. Von Neumann also greatly assisted the studies of fluid dynamics and statistics. While all of this aforementioned work was critically influential, it does not have the same impact on U.S. history as von Neumann's work in the Manhattan Project and other computing and nuclear projects. In these projects, von Neumann often had a central role, designing the lenses and engineering for the weapon dropped on Nagasaki. He was on the committee that selected the targets for the nuclear weapons and coined the term kiloton to refer to explosive power. After the war, von Neumann continued to work on the weapons, unlike some prominent scientists in the project. He consulted for a variety of military projects and was a central figure in the U.S. development of the ICBM, including heading the committee on its development for a brief period before his death, and worked on reducing the size of the warheads, a major requirement for their function. Von Neumann's efforts were inspired by his work in game theory, and the concept of mutually assured destruction was pioneered and heavily promoted by him. Including efforts with the CIA to ensure that the U.S. kept up with missile development, and efforts to avoid a missile gap with the Soviets, given his firmly anti-totalitarian politics, self-described as violently anti-communist, and much more militaristic than the norm. The work he did for the U.S. government earned him the Medal of Freedom from Dwight D. Eisenhower, citing his work with the CIA and in development of nuclear weaponry. In addition to major works in U.S. nuclear development, von Neumann also worked on early computing, developing the merge sort for arrays, a 23-page program for the EDVAC. He also worked on random number generation and methods of modeling using randomness. He described the foundation of most modern computers with data and programs stored together, and worked on multiple early computers, including the EDVAC and ENIAC. In addition, his work on self-replication preceded the discovery of DNA, and gave him the position of theoretical creator of all computer viruses. And he designed a mathematical self-replicator that made perfect copies of itself using over 2,000 cells with specific rules. He also worked in meteorology, and research into climate engineering led him to posit a theory of human-caused global warming. In addition, he was the first to discuss the idea of a technological singularity. John von Neumann is one of the most influential American scientists to date. A peer of Einstein and Enrico Fermi, who founded multiple fields and reshaped even more. A pioneer in polymath who influenced U.S. history directly and indirectly with his foundational work in computer science, physics, and mathematics. Many of his works taken alone secure him a spot in a list of influential scientists and mathematicians, but together they place him near the top, alongside Newton, Euclid, Euler, and Einstein.